Hi, Dre here, and welcome to this level's Hidden Checkpoint. I have been a fan of RPGs since I was a kid, and I was even a fan of it when I barely knew the term RPGs ever existed in the first place. They have always provided me with a sense of adventure and awe that let me escape the mundane day-to-day of our reality. Countless hours of questing, fighting, and adventuring with some of the most well-written and complex characters I ever had the pleasure of meeting and forming relationships with.
Now you are mocking me. Do you wish the ring or not? I am tempted to simply keep it.
Now let's dive in on how this franchise became one of a kind and much beloved, to surrounding itself with controversy riddled with hate and doubts. The rise and success of Western-developed dark fantasy RPGs these past few years have been a sight to behold, especially for fans of the genre. Game franchises like the Witcher series, the phenomenal Elder Scrolls games, and surprising hits like Divinity Original Sin 2, and let's not forget the instant classic that is Baldur's Gate 3, played a huge role in the positive reception the genre has been getting as of late. But if you ask older fans of the genre if that is the case, most likely you will hear the answer: it has always been popular, it was just more niche. Which is a statement that holds truth with games like Neverwinter Nights and Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 slowly gaining huge cult followings and loyal fanbases at the time of their releases, but isn't exactly the breakout hits that the genre is attributed to. If there is one game franchise that started the monumental rise of the genre's popularity and bridged the gap of the old guard's love and the new blood's fascination for the genre, it has to be To better understand how this once beloved franchise fell from the good graces of its fanbase, we need to start from how it came to be. The Dragon Age franchise started with Dragon Age Origins, which was first released in November 3, 2009, and served as the bridge from classics like Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights, which BioWare also developed. From its setting, to its combat system, to its storytelling, it was always advertised and touted to be a spiritual successor to the CRPG games of old. Production began on late 2002, and BioWare at the time was eager to start working and developing their own properties. Before, they always almost worked exclusively with different companies' licenses, such as Neverwinter Nights and Baldur's Gate, which were tied to the Dungeons & Dragons IP, and Knights of the Old Republic to the franchise Far Far Away. BioWare proved themselves with imbuing these franchises with their own creative flair, but within the company, it was unanimously agreed upon that they could do so much more with worlds and stories of their own design. So work quickly began on an original high fantasy RPG that took inspiration from the works of George R.R. Martin and Tolkien, but also took inspiration from real-world history with themes of racism and classism on full display for the player to experience and ponder on. The game takes place on the land of Thedas, a magical strewn land home to humans, elves, dwarves, and the Qunari. On the brink of collapse due to the Darkspawn invasion known as the Blight. The Darkspawn are a race of humanoid-tainted creatures that mostly dwell in the underground of Thedas, led by a powerful entity known as an archdemon. You play as either a human, elf, or dwarf, in which you can fully customize from a variety of limited facial, hair, and body features, and to what your starting class would be. Depending on what race and background you choose, each of your characters will have a different origin story, but no matter what origin story you get, the path ahead will always see your character be inducted to the Order of the Grey Wardens, a powerful organization tasked with fighting back the Blight since its conception. When the time came of its release, the game received an overwhelmingly positive reception both from the critics and players. The game was hailed as the embodiment of all the positive aspects that the genre was known for and pushed it to new heights at the same time. Players fell in love with the characters and how well written and deep they are, and how well crafted their personal stories have been tackled, providing the player with romance, tragedy, comedy, and emotional moments all throughout the game. The world and setting was a breath of fresh air for many, as it was known that the fantasy genre typically adopts a more light-hearted tone. Dragon Age Origins never shied away from the heavy themes and subjects that thrust the players to making heavy and game-altering decisions that impacted the overall story. Its combat and customization system was also praised to be a tactical lover's dream, with the players having full control of how you fully customize your entire party outside of battle. And when in battle, you can micromanage all of your party's action thanks to its real-time with pause system that it adopted from the CRPGs of old, but revamped to be more engaging for both newcomers and veterans of the genre. The game proved that in the ever-turning tides in the gaming industry, in which more and more games were becoming more cinematic and more action-driven, there was still room for the old-school design and sensibilities that the genre brought to the table all those years ago. It also proved that BioWare was indeed a heavy contender in the gaming landscape at the time, and was hailed as a savior of the CRPG genre. According to an interview conducted by Eurogamer, it took BioWare 6 to 7 years to develop Origins, and one might think that the studio would be willing to move on from the game post-release. Surprisingly and fortunately for fans, they kept supporting it by releasing a steady stream of downloadable content. And with the release of its biggest expansion, Awakening, it further reached heights no game in the genre ever has. But little did BioWare know that the road ahead for this blossoming franchise would be met with troubles that the studio will struggle to claw its way out from. During the development of Origins in 2007, BioWare attracted the attention of Electronic Arts. The Redwood City, California-based publisher wanted to get back on top of the video games market and was willing to pay a hefty price to get there. And on the 11th of October 2007, it was announced that VG Holding Corp, the parent company of BioWare, had been bought by Electronic Arts for $775 million. BioWare therefore became a unit of EA, but still retained its own branding. To the surprise of most fans, the mega publisher never meddled in the development of Origins and just provided the necessary resources for BioWare to deliver the final product. With the success of Origins, BioWare was eager to start on its sequel. Its development team had already some ideas on where they want the series to go. They thought about leaning away from the Darkspawn being the main antagonist for the next game and focus more on creating a story around the many political conflicts that riddled the land of Thedas. So work quickly began on a sequel that the studio hoped would shake up the gaming industry once more. There was a slight problem, however, and by slight, I mean a f***ing big one. The game was tasked to release in just over a year. But why? RPGs usually need a lot longer development time because of the complexity in design that's present in them compared to other games and genres, especially with an RPG the size of Dragon Age. As it turns out, problem lied with internal struggles and focus shifting within the company. In 2008, BioWare had established a branch studio in Austin, Texas, with the sole focus on developing Star Wars: The Old Republic, a new massive multiplayer online game that they hoped would compete with the likes of World of Warcraft. But due to multiple setbacks in development, the Texas branch quickly found out that they will not be able to do so until later on in 2011. This news frustrated EA's executives because they wanted BioWare to release a steady stream of products to further increase their quarterly sales profits. With the inadequacy of the Star Wars team, EA decided that the Dragon Age team would need to double its efforts to make up for the loss of potential profits that the company would have made from Star Wars: The Old Republic. Needless to say, a sequel for the Dragon Age franchise would need to release in a little over a year. Before the problem with the Texas branch, the Dragon Age team decided that the sequel would take place on a globe-trotting adventure that sees the player leading an organization tasked in dealing with different political problems across the land. But with the news of the short development time that they were given, they had to scale back on most of the ideas they had already agreed upon. Now, the sequel would take place almost entirely in the city-state of Kirkwall. You play as Hawk, a human immigrant that fled and settled in Kirkwall after running from the Blight with his or her family, and will follow their adventures in the course of a decade. When the game was unveiled and showed to the public during press runs to build hype around it, they were quickly met with criticism and disdain from the general fanbase. While the smaller world and scope definitely rubbed fans the wrong way, it was the changes made to its predecessor's established gameplay systems that fans gravitated to the most. Origins was praised for providing fans of the genre a slow but methodical approach to its combat reminiscent of the CRPGs of old, a design feature that fans of the genre hold near and dear to their heart and they felt was slowly becoming obsolete within the gaming industry. BioWare abandoned that design for a more faster and action-oriented gameplay for its sequel, while also stripping down most of its predecessor's more complex RPG design elements. The change confused fans and questions were asked on why such an unnecessary change was even made. Mike Laidlaw, the series creative director, answered that question in an interview with Distractoid in 2011. According to Laidlaw, the team evaluated Origin's different gameplay components, especially its overly complex mechanics, and studied players' feedback. After learning most of the players never finished the early hours of Origins, the team's goal was to make Dragon Age 2 more accessible to new players and appeal to more players. They decided to streamline some of the game's mechanics while retaining many conventional elements of a role-playing game. One of the major reasons for the disinterest of players felt during Origins was the lack of immediacy the combat system had offered. As a result, the team looked at gameplay of action games and sped up its combat so it would be more responsive and give more immediate responses without latency. While it became more action-oriented, the team did not completely remove the tactical aspects of Origins as they felt that would alienate its fanbase. While some may disdain the changes made, some changes were quickly accepted by others, such as the changes made to its relationship system. In Origins, being nice and always agreeing with your companions was the only way to acquire an advantageous relationship with them.
Sometimes I think that maybe we could be more than that. Maker, look at me stumbling over my words like an ill-educated peasant girl. Some bard I am.
But in 2, they reworked the system so that the player can either get into a friendly or rivalry relationship with your companions depending on your choices in the game, with each path providing the player with different advantages to their companion's skills and attributes. Even with the negativity surrounding the game during its development, the team was still hopeful that Dragon Age 2 would still make an impact in the gaming industry once more. But when the time came of its release, it only managed to divide its fanbase. This was a sign that Dragon Age was slowly losing its identity. While some of its changes resonated with fans who had an issue with the prequel's combat and RPG designs, the majority of players still felt disappointed with the current state of the franchise. To them, it seemed like BioWare waved the flag of defeat and conformed to what the industry deemed popular at the time. They felt it had let go of everything that made its predecessor unique just to appeal to a more casual audience. Despite the negativity surrounding the game, it managed to sold fairly well, with an estimated 2 million copies sold in 2 months of its release, giving BioWare a chance to make a third game and to redeem themselves in the eyes of their fanbase. But as it is with Dragon Age 2, they will quickly realize that working on the game's third entry would be the most challenging one yet. the surprise of most fans, development on Dragon Age Inquisition started prior to the release of Dragon Age 2. It was originally planned to be a multiplayer-only centric experience codenamed Blackfoot during its development. But why? Why start making a third game when the second game hasn't been released yet? Well, as it turns out, codenamed Blackfoot was made because BioWare was looking for a successor to the Eclipse engine, the game engine used to develop Origins and Dragon Age 2. While the engine had served them well, the development team and artists slowly felt that it leaves a lot to be desired. Its graphical rendering isn't as powerful as it was needed to be, and the artists wanted an engine that can bring beautiful and detailed environments to life. The team thought of switching to Unreal, the engine used in the Mass Effect trilogy, but BioWare's executives had a better idea. According to Jason Schreier's book, Blood, Sweat and Pixels, the executives were enamored with something a little more foreign, the Frostbite engine. This phenomenal and powerful engine was made by EA's Swedish branch, DICE Studios. Frostbite had originally been designed to create first-person shooters like Battlefield and Star Wars Battlefront. This decision greatly delighted EA, as not only does BioWare will be able to create a new Dragon Age game with higher quality and fidelity, but they will also be able to protect their assets from leaking to the public, which is a problem with working with a third-party engine such as Unreal. So work on codename Blackfoot started, with Mark Dara, the Dragon Age series executive producer, assembling a small team in BioWare to work on it, while the bulk of the team finished Dragon Age 2. But as quickly as it was started, it was quickly dropped in only just a few months, and the reason lied with the very engine itself. As it turns out, creating a new RPG with Frostbite was extremely challenging and unmanageable with such a small team. But even considering a bigger team, Dara realized that the engine itself isn't suited to be used to create an RPG, let alone an RPG with the scope and scale of Dragon Age. But with the cancellation of both codename Blackfoot and a massive expansion for Dragon Age 2, the studio would have all the manpower they need when the production of the game's real third entry eventually starts. The team decided to revisit the original ideas they had for 2, and unanimously agreed that the next game in the series will be an open-world game where the player will lead the Inquisition, a powerful organization tasked in bringing order to the land of Thedas because of an event that led to a portal rupturing the connection between the Fade and Thedas, letting in demons and the like to wreak havoc all across the land. Development was sluggish, with the team struggling to even make a functioning gameplay system even work. Soon, they realized that Frostbite was a completely different beast than what they were used to. Morale was low and tensions were high. Aside from the difficulties that Frostbite presented, the toxicity brought upon by the fanbase slowly crept in the minds of the developers, resulting in the team doubting and second-guessing themselves at every step, with new ideas and gameplay systems being quickly abandoned due to the fear that it will not meet the standards of their core fans. But even with all these problems circling above their heads, the team hunkered down and focused on making the best version of a game they were hoping that will once again shake up the gaming industry. When the game finally released, all their worries would all be for naught, as the game was once again received with much positive reception and would ride those praises to win Game of the Year in the very first Game Awards in 2014. But under the glitz and glamour that quotes Inquisition, a bubble of negativity slowly rised and grew from the hearts of fans. First was the combat. Although BioWare made an effort to please both the fast-paced and tactical fans by implementing back the tactical camera that was introduced in Origins, but still retaining the action-packed gameplay of Dragon Age 2, it never reached the tactical heights that fans wanted since the release of Origins. Second were the side quests. While the main story undoubtedly had moments that will pull you in, it was the moments between them that fans found lacking, with the game being littered with fetch quests and uninspired combat trials and not much else. And third was the bloated size of the open world itself. While not being a traditional open world, players still found the individual environments in the game too big with not much to do in them pretty boring. It didn't help BioWare that 6 months later on May 2015, The Witcher 3 was released, and fans of the RPG genre quickly named it the new king. and the inevitable comparison between it and Inquisition only brought to light the many flaws that Inquisition had underneath regarding its quest design, writing, and performance issues. From then on, BioWare continued to damage their reputation, with the failure of both Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem further souring fans' good graces. It wasn't long until BioWare completely alienated their core fanbase, with their focus shifting from making great games to implementing anti-consumer practices within their games, with Anthem being its biggest example. Although fans fully accepted that there was no hope for the Dragon Age franchise to return to its glory days, the yearning for a fourth game in the series still lived on in their hearts. Fans will have their interests and hopes renewed when a trailer for a fourth game was teased to the public on 2018. Not much news came after its announcement, and fans started to wonder if the game would even come out at all. It looked like BioWare cancelled the game behind closed doors, but to the surprise of many, BioWare would release the announcement trailer for their most anticipated game yet, Dragon Age: The Veilguard, and its reception was, not very good, as one might say. The trailer quickly sparked the ire and disgust of the fans, as it looked like BioWare completely strayed away from the franchise's dark roots in favor of a more lighthearted and almost Marvel-esque-like quality in its writing and tone. The negative news about the game's reception quickly spread all throughout the internet, with more and more people covering the games and even BioWare's eventual downfall. And with the Veilguard's release on October 31, 2024, it was quickly met with so much negative criticism and controversial news surrounding it that it initially drowned out the alleged, curated positive reviews that game outlets and journalists published to the public. Putting the controversy aside, it was clear that by just playing the game, the very soul and essence of Dragon Age were lost forever. With shallow writing, uninspired action combat, and the lack of even the most basic RPG elements plagued the game from start to finish. Only time will tell if this trend of negativity will cause the complete demise of BioWare, or will the studio turn things around and regain the trust of their fans. But one thing is clear, the sun is slowly starting to set for this once beloved franchise, and the old fans are gazing upon it just beyond the horizon. The story of Dragon Age is a cautionary tale, with BioWare being the author of its downfall. As time went on and as the seasons passed, BioWare sought to innovate on a genre they thought was being left in the past. Slowly, they stripped and abandoned all the things that made Dragon Age unique in the eyes of many, without ever realizing that those aspects are what made fans fall in love with their games in the first place. Being a fan of Dragon Age like myself, I once saw BioWare as the heroes of the genre, a beacon of quality that most likely inspired most of our favorite games today. But as time went on, with more of their games failing to capture the hearts of their fans, and slowly deteriorating the talent that the studio once fostered, they continued to chase trends they thought would be better for the company instead of listening to the passionate outcry of their once loyal fans, and alienating the ones who built their foundational footing in the gaming industry. BioWare were once kings of the genre, a genre much beloved and brought happiness to so many people to this day. But now, they are but a husk of their old selves, sitting on a throne that doesn't belong to them. And as the saying goes, heavy is the head that wears the crown.